Good morning and welcome to a very special interview show of The Prode. The diplomatic relations between India and Denmark, established in September 1949, are marked by regular high-level exchanges and are based on historical links, common democratic traditions, and a shared desire for regional as well as international peace and stability. Joining me today to talk about Denmark-India bilateral relations is Ambassador of Denmark to India, His Excellency Ambassador Freddy Svane. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for your time and a very warm welcome to the show. Really appreciate that you have taken out the time to do this.
Thank you very much, my friend. It's always good to meet people from India, and especially those who are studying outside of India and living outside of India. But thank you very much for inviting me on your show.
Thank you, sir. So, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru's visit to Denmark in 1957 led the foundation for a friendly relationship between India and Denmark. So, how has been the diplomatic relations between both the countries from then?
As you rightly said, Nehru came in June 1957, and since then we have had on and off, of course, in all relations, also diplomatic relations. You have your ups and downs and so forth. A lot has to do with the context. But looking back now, we have had a number of bilateral interactions, as you rightly said, at a very high level. And the recent one was, of course, the visit of the Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Copenhagen on the 3rd of May. And then before that, we had, in fact, to go 20 years back since the then last visit happened. And in October 83, we had Indira Gandhi. So it's not that we are meeting every day, but what is remarkable in our relationship as of today is that the last 3 years, in fact, we've had 3 summits. So in 20, in 21, and now in 22. So I think we have really accelerated our relationship to our unknown, unprecedented level.
Yeah. So what are some of the major sectors in which India and Denmark have bilateral partnerships, and how successful these partnerships have been in terms of the economic developments of both countries?
I think I'll restrict me to what we are doing now, because that's perhaps the most interesting part. It's also of importance for where we are and where we're heading. When I came back to India, I'm here on my second step. We were looking into how we could take our relationship to the next level. And instead of having a traditional strategic partnership, we decided to connect a little bit the dots between what the present government and the present prime minister is really opting for and what Denmark is good at. And that led to the creation of what we call the Green Strategic Partnership. And the Green Strategic Partnership is really to connect what we are good at in Denmark with, let's say, the green energy transition and so forth, and the development agenda of the Indian government. And I myself was sitting on the ramparts of the old fort in Red Fort in Delhi in June. 15th of August 2014. And I listened to then newly elected Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who spoke about open defecation, sanitation, and so forth. So then at that time, I realized that the missions are a really, really good tool to mobilize people across whatever they have as background, and to secure that the society as such is developing. So that's led to the, let's say, the agreement about the Green Strategic Partnership.
Yeah, now coming to the trade relations. So how have been the trade relations between the countries, and how it has flourished so far?
I mean, 400 years ago, a Danish royal fleet, in fact, landed on the shores of what is true Tamil Nadu today. And we were not colonizing, we were traders. So the Danish representatives at that time, they signed a treaty with the local Nayak and started trading. So we bought, we paid, and we exported a lot of the stuff from India, being cottons, textiles, some tea, of course, and so forth. And that was sent to Copenhagen for auctioning and so forth. But we were never colonizing. And then we also expanded our network out here. We had a trading mission in outside of Kolkata called Serampore, and much to perhaps many surprise, we also included the Nicobars and the Andamans in our trading system out here. In 1845, we gave up all and we sold whatever we had of buildings and so forth to the British. Then, of course, when India got its independence, we started looking into how could we trade with India. But it took many years, also because of the let's say the situation of India, a poor country with a lot of challenges and so forth. And then we came in the 60s, we came with development assistance and so forth, and we helped training a lot of people within the different sectors and so forth. And only in, let's say, in the late 28, we started looking into India as an emerging market and how could we trade with India, how could we really take things forward. So in that context, our trade is minuscule. We are trying to expand it. Challenge being that you can't measure trade or trade engagement just based on bilateral trade. The same goes for investment, because a Danish company might invest in India out of Singapore or out of Amsterdam or out of London and so forth. And trade could also take different routes. So you can't measure it. But one thing is very clear, and both sides we have agreed that we have to really expand our trade relations, and we have high hopes that the free trade agreement now being relaunched between India and the European Union will really make fast, substantial progress, and we are really strong supporters of an early conclusion.
Yeah. So another very important topic that is discussed widely is sustainability and green energy. So how has been the Denmark-India partnership in the field of sustainability and green energy, and what is the way forward for both the countries in terms of sustainable development? And could you please link it to the free trade agreement talks that are going between European Union and India?
Thank you very much. The Green Strategic Partnership, in fact, has four main tracks: energy, water, climate, and what we call green financing. And the whole idea is to share. We are not preaching to India what to do and not to do. I mean, it's up to you. You have your own agenda. You have your own, let's say, domestic challenges, opportunities as well. So what we are doing is that we bring in our technologies and experiences and so forth. And Denmark, since the early 1970s, when we were hit by the oil crisis, at that time we were 100% dependent on imported fossil fuel. And suddenly oil supply stopped, a little bit like today, but for different reasons. And then we started looking into how we could reduce our dependency. And today, I'm proud to say that Denmark has become really one of the leading clean tech nations. We are having a lot of electricity consumed, not produced, but consumed, coming from green and renewable sources like wind onshore and now to a bigger extent offshore wind and so forth. We have smart energy grids and so forth. We are very big into biomass. So we have a lot to offer India, and I think India already has taken on board some of our technologies. Of course, Western technology is extremely sophisticated and price tag is really high. So in that context, it's also good to work with India and Indian partners. We believe that it's the private sector that will have to do the major parts of it. And then, to make things cheaper and therefore also more affordable is one big thing that India is really good at. The link to the free trade is, of course, to strengthen the ties, but also to make it easier for private companies really to trade, to exchange, and so forth. And therefore, whatever we do bilaterally will only be, let's say, enforced and strengthened if we have a free trade agreement, and also investment protection, investment facilitation, all these things. And the latest, I think, very important step was the launch of this Trade and Technology Council that the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, announced during her visit here. I find it's a fantastic idea because it will add a kind of strategic mechanism to what we have done. And I think it's replacing or at least bringing in a new element, a missing link, if I may, into the EU-India relations. So everything is connected. We live in a very, let's say, very complex world where not only a small country or smart country or big country, not so smart country, we are all dependent on each other. So the more framework we have, at least among these countries who are sharing the same values, democratic values, believe in rule of law and all that, then I think we will move forward very, very, very fast.
Yes, sir. So now coming to the educational and cultural ties. So how has been the educational and cultural ties between both the nations, and how can India and Denmark partner in order to increase the exchange of students between the countries as far as the higher education is concerned?
I think there are two ways of doing it. We have done things over time. We have had a number of Indian students coming to Denmark. We have a number of extremely well qualified researchers living in Denmark, studying in Denmark, doing research, and they are heading some very, very important networks of researchers in emerging and strategic technologies and so forth. So it's already happening. But what we would like to see, and that's also why we, when we had Prime Minister Modi in Denmark, we agreed on a cultural exchange program, and that sets out a number of activity fields where we can have a bigger exchange. And I personally believe in that the more ties we have, the more people-to-people connects we have, the stronger the fundament of the relationship will be. And so therefore, in the coming years, we'll do even more to secure that the ties will grow and that we mutually will be benefiting from these exchanges. We need to cross ideas. We need to secure that we understand our cultures better, and we need to engage with, let's say, perhaps the world's largest talent pool, namely India. And there are three very important T's here. That's trade, technology, and talents. And India has everything, and Denmark will have the same, but not to the same scale as you have. So by combining whatever we can on the Danish side with whatever India can on your side, and what we, let's say, respectively would like to develop and so forth, I think we have a great future ahead of us.
Yeah, so another important aspect of education and research is science and technology. So how has been the bilateral partnership between both the countries in the fields of science and technology and research and development, and what is the way forward for both the countries in these domains?
I think initially it was based more on personal contacts, research networks and so forth. And when I was out here during my first tenure, I met a lot of Indian researchers at IITs and wherever they were, and they did not know Denmark, but they knew the professors having their position in Denmark and so forth. So we tried to map that and found out there was many hundreds of projects where Indian researchers were working with Danish researchers and vice versa. Over the years and since the independence of India, we have had a number of really high-profile Danes who have had a very important, not to say vital, impact on India's development. We have been part of what we call the Green Revolution. We had a very well-known businessman. He founded a company called Haldor Topsoe. He brought technologies to India so India could produce fertilizers, and that was part of the Green Revolution. And in that context, I think I know he had a very, very important role in securing that Indian farmers could produce more through the use of fertilizers. We also had a very famous scientist called Niels Bohr, and he came to India in the beginning of the 1960s and had an exchange with his colleagues about the technologies, civil use of nuclear power and so forth. So we have had a number of interactions by the top guys who also wanted to assist, inspire India. And don't forget also what we call the white revolution. We brought in cows, we brought in genetics. Our Denmark is a dairy country, a farming country, but we also brought in some of our technologies and genetics to India. So the yield of a cow could expand and so forth. So we have had a lot of that. And as of today, we have a lot of new corporations. We have just agreed to set up a Center of Excellence for Dairy, and that will also bring in research and all that. We have joint calls, and the last or the most recent call was on green hydrogen. So we are having calls for researchers, groups of researchers, really to develop the green hydrogen, and it's highly needed. So there are a vast number of activities, and more will come definitely.
Yes, sir. So I would like to conclude the discussion by asking that are there any challenges that are affecting the bilateral relations between both the nations? If yes, how can both the countries work together in order to counter those challenges? And what is the way forward for both the nations?
I think all relationships will have challenges. Most of them are good ones. Others are, let's say, things that we perhaps we do not pay too much attention to. But if I look into where we are today and what we are aiming at, I think we have agreed that we will work as closely as ever possible with the green transition, which is important for climate reasons, or our ability to deliver on the SDGs lined out by the United Nations, and we have to deliver by 2030. Climate is also a big issue. So I see a lot of common ground, and I think I will end this interview by saying that there are 3 Gs for the time being that are really being a supplement to the 5 Ss. And let me start with the 5 Ss are formulated by your Honorable Prime Minister in full cooperation with our Prime Minister, namely scale of India, skills of Denmark. The scope of what we're doing is beyond the bilateral. Speed is needed because we have all these issues with climate and SDGs. Then finally, sustainability. So whatever we are doing has to be in a sustainable way. We support that India is developing economically, but the only thing we are telling India is don't commit the same mistakes, errors that we did, being too dependent on fossil fuel, and this thing has really created the climate crisis. And then back and finally to the 3 Gs. I think we are good, we are great, and we agree when it comes to our relationship and our ambitions for the bilateral, but also for the world ahead. So I think we all have a role to play individually as wherever we are placed, but also country to country, to secure that we will have a world which is based on being good, being great, and being green.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for your time. Really hope that India and Denmark will take the relationship to another level. On this note, I want to end this interview. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate that you came here to the show.
Thank you. All the best.